Hello, and welcome to another episode of FSI Feature Friday. We interview entrepreneurs and business specialists to help you mind your business. Today, we'll be speaking to Mr. Gaylord Taylor from AGT Securities about fraud. Stay tuned. Hello. Your name is?
Gaylord Taylor.
How do you spell that?
Gaylord Taylor.
Your business?
I'm a security, I would guess, manager. We deal in security products, security services. Lately, I've been doing more of consultancy role for companies in loss prevention, risk management, that type of stuff.
Okay, great. And today, we're going to be talking about security fraud?
No, we're going to be talking about fraud examinations. Security frauds is, you get it on Wall Street and stuff like that. We're not on that level.
I gotcha.
All right. Just a quick breakdown on what fraud really is. Fraud is really persons using intelligent schemes to defraud or take monies from people or take something valuable. It doesn't necessarily have to be monies. It could be something that has value. For instance, property and whatever else. Everybody knows about Ponzi schemes. There are a lot of those floating around right now. Okay. And they're very, very simple. Or the basic pyramid scheme. Everybody at the bottom put in $1 and it goes up and somebody gets $10 out of it, but the guy really at the top is the one getting the $500,000 out of it.
Oh, yes.
Because it's a very simple plan. Everybody wants to get rich at some point and somehow, and so it's very easy to prey on weak-minded, I say weak-minded, or gullible people. Well, you can be informed a lot of frauds. Fraud schemes, for instance, I know, for instance, there's something called Wake Up Now floating around up there. That has a lot of persons concerned, of course, in the United States. It doesn't look from the outside as a fraud, but there are a lot of elements to it that tend itself to be fraudulent.
Okay.
I know that when artists started over here, a lot of people were like, "Oh, that might be a fraud scheme." Well, artists is not actually. I actually did my own research on it. It's not. But the thing about these type of investments, like I tell people, is that it requires you to kind of get everybody else in. It's more like a sales pitch, and that's how most fraud schemes work. They work on a sales pitch level. But what I deal with companies. For instance, you have a food store and they're experiencing 15 to 20% loss. Okay, or loss of what they call spillage, which means that items are missing, inventory is low. Items are routinely damaged. There is no real explanation for this. In a lot of cases like that, what you find is that there is an employee or employees of the company who are looking for ways to make themselves a little bit of extra cash. And in fraud, we look for what we call the fraud triangle. First, there must be a person who has a problem. They have a financial problem. That's the first thing. Okay, and that could be anything. Fellas, right now in Grand Bahama, we have plenty of people facing financial challenges. Okay, from the fact that they just can't pay the light bill, they can't pay mortgage, whatever else. The second thing is that there must be an opportunity in the place that they work. Okay? And the third is that they must feel that they have to get away with it. Okay? So here are these three things floating around there. And persons are saying, okay, wow, I'm broke, and I really need the money. So first off, people start to justify. Okay, that's a part that's inherent in us as well. Like, they look for the justification of what they're doing.
They don't want to feel like what they're doing is wrong.
No,
it's necessary.
Right. Well, there is also the 10-10-80 rule, which means that 10% of every employment base will not steal.
Okay.
Doesn't matter what the situation is, they will not steal. Then there's the 10% that will. They don't care what it is. They don't care how little it is. They don't care what's the word of it. They will steal. And then, of course, there's the 80% who, given the circumstances, may go yay or nay. All right? And most of us fall in the 80% bracket. Okay? We work for persons and we say, I'm working hard hours. I'm not being paid properly. I already have a financial situation. They live in this. The boss always coming and taking $20 and $30 to go and drinking with, that's my money I work for. Why don't I just put that in my pocket? And I know that he's not going to know it's missing because, he's not really on the ball. So you have these things that occur. My job is basically to go in and look at companies and look and see where there are deficiencies. Usually there's deficiency in their security systems. Their point of sale systems might be deficient. Some people I know a company right now that their point of sale systems is off by about, is usually off by about $10, $15 a day because it's the actual software. But the persons who own the company just don't really care. It's not a big loss. They know about it. But the thing about it is their cashiers know about it as well. But their cashiers know about it. So their cashiers can be like, okay. I mean, I believe that the employees are loyal. But of course, the opportunity might arise where they might need $10 to buy some lunch, or they might have to buy Pampers or whatever else. And so here it is now. That is already there. Now, say for instance, they come up short $20. Oh, it's the system. Okay, how can you deny that? How can you as an employer deny that? So that's a problem. So that needs to be fixed. That means that there is a possibility there is a situation that can be presented, or it can be used, okay, to allow fraud. Then of course there's this thing that we do in Grand Bahama, and I think in the Bahamas and nationwide, where we employ people who have been involved in fraudulent acts before. I tell the story of how I was involved with a company and I did a fraud examination. Basically, somebody was stealing, the cashier was stealing. And she was fired from the company. The company didn't want any, they didn't want no publicity on it because they didn't want no bad press. Yeah. So they quietly let her go. She paid back the money that they discovered, or we discovered she stole that week. Considering she was working for the company for 2 years, I figured she got off very, very easily. I always advocate pressing criminal charges. Of course, it's not my call. And so she was just basically let go. She was dismissed.
So can I ask, how would you find out if someone was dismissed for fraudulent charges to protect your business?
Well, you can get very aggressive background checks. That's something that we do as a company. You can get we call it the 360 approach. Mm-hmm. We talk to people. Sometimes persons don't actually say anything to you. They don't say, I always tell people, if I get a resume, right? Not a resume, a reference letter. And the reference letter says she's been working for us for 3 years. I know, and I know she was employed here for 3 years. That's it. That's what's on the reference letter. I say no. There's something else going on there. Most persons, especially here in our country, if they do a good job, we say they do a good job. We would write a paragraph, even if it's just, well, I've known her for 3 years, she's done an excellent job, she's always been on time, la la la, it's there. But if you see where, I can verify that she's been employed with the company for 3 years, her position was made redundant or whatever on such and such a date. That's it.
It's kind of like she just showed up.
Yeah. So what you need to do, you need to just kind of like, you know what? Even sometimes if you call people, because people, we don't want to get in a situation where we're libelous, mm-hmm. or we open up ourselves for suit. But if you're talking to a former employee, they'll hint to you. Well, if it really was up to me, I wouldn't hire her. Okay, that's something I need to look. That's a question mark. Okay. All right, and so those type of things you gotta kind of utilize. And also this, I look at people with their resumes, right? 2002 to 2004, 2004 to 2006, 2006 to 2009. All of a sudden, 2012. Okay, what happened to 2009 to 2012? You tell me you're unemployed for 3 years? And so these are the type of things that you can use, I guess, small investigative tools. But going back to it, I went, like I said, she was a cashier, and I went to Burger King, and I pulled up to Burger King a couple of weeks later, and I'm getting my little meal, and I look in the window, and guess who's sitting there behind the cash register? And of course I think she was let go, or she was dismissed sometime later for the same thing. Again. She's actually cashing someplace else right now. I could say that without a shadow of a doubt. So, persons tend to carry on and do things that they are comfortable doing. Okay. All right. And that is, especially in the workplace. If you're comfortable doing certain things, you look for the opportunity. My job is to go in there and prevent the opportunity. to again look at staff, look at employee issues, look at what's going on. For instance, there's a company that we dealt with and we worked for. By strengthening up their security protocols and everything, that we actually cut their coffer tabs. Okay, they were losing up to like $20,000 a month. We were able to cut that down to literally, pennies, $100, $200. And I can tell you what was happening. The workers were going out, and what they were doing, they were misaccounting for the amount of copper that they were using, copper wiring, whatever else. And they would take a roll out. They'd go by one of their boys and cut off 100 feet. They come back in, it was used. There was no proper procedures. There was no actual mechanism in place to count the rolls or to average the rolls out before they left the yard. And this was in Nassau, and it was instrumental, because what we did is we got a little machine that basically you put on the roll, on each roll, and as the rolls were spun off, it counted, and you can tamper with it. That machine actually cost $28, right? And we had to buy 8 of them. But the thing about it is that even though there was probably a way of to tamper with it, we bought it because it really didn't seem to be one. But I'm sure people will find a way. But because the employees knew that they were being watched, they knew that now somebody was actually taking account of the product. Okay, we took away one part of the triangle. Okay, we took away the ability, the opportunity. So once we took away the opportunity, the other two parts negated. Okay. Because even though they could justify why they wanted it, okay, and they thought they could get away with it and all this other stuff, because there was that one piece gone, the opportunity, they couldn't do nothing else. Because guess what? If I know somebody's watching me, you know what? I might come up 5 feet short, but 100. Nah, just ain't worth the risk. I'm getting paid good, I have a good job, even though I might have stress, whatever else, I'm going to find something else to do, another opportunity. And so this is what we offer companies. We know that VAT is coming on stream, and even though it's only passed the House so far, it's almost destined to pass the Senate. There's no doubt about that, I think, in my mind, because the government has to find another way of bringing in revenue. The trick about this is that there is inadequate enforcement. There's no doubt of that. If you look around at what's going on right now in the economy when it comes to collections now, you can see that VAT is going to pose a very serious challenge to the government. And one of those challenges is that VAT is self-policing. And because it's a self-policing program, you're talking to a community or a society. I say this publicly, we are a pirate nation.
We are.
Okay, that's in our DNA. I think that's just how we are. We always look for the opportunity to scam the system. Don't care who we are. And the thing about that is that VAT is very scammable, because it puts the bonus, or the onus, I should say, on me to say, be honest. And if I'm a business owner right now and I'm suffering, and most business owners, I think, are in some extent, big and small, and you're saying to me, I have to pay a fee or pay a tax that you're going to pay back to me, but why don't I just keep the money? Then there is also look at it like NIB. There are numerous businesses in the Bahamas that are not NIB compliant. Why? They're not collecting the money. They just choose not to pay it to the government. And this is a choice I think plenty of businesses are going to make when it comes to VAT as well. That's VAT as well. But you would say, well, where would persons like me come in? Well, we come in very simple. We're the ones who are going to go in and look at companies and say, look here, hey, where's the second book? Because persons are going to be doing, I said in an article that they creative accounting. There's going to be a lot of creative accounting going on. And, this is where fraud examiners come in. Because forensic examination is a part of fraud examinations. With the Bahamas chapter of fraud examiners, it's a very, I should say, wide-based specialty field. And, by being a part of this association, we have persons and experts in every field that we could draw on, and to give us advice and to kind of look at what we're going to be dealing with when it comes to a fraud examination. I made, and somebody was talking about, because there's in Britain, in Europe, there's what they call the missing merchant scheme. Okay, and in Grand Bahama, that can work very well, because the missing merchant scheme basically means that somebody brings in a product, They don't pay VAT because they're in a VAT-free area or whatever else. And they bring that product in and they turn around and sell it in an area that has VAT. They charge VAT, okay? Or they sell it to another company who's going to sell it for VAT. So they charge VAT to the company charges VAT on what they did, okay? But the original purchaser disappears or basically goes missing. So now here it is, okay, what's going to go on with that? Where's the government going to get that revenue from? You have Grand Bahama where we have canals and stuff like that people have been utilizing for years. I remember, I can talk from law enforcement, people have been using these canals for years to get past customs. I don't see no reason why it's going to stop now for VAT. I think it's actually going to increase. And so you're going to have situations where companies in NASA are going to be purchasing items from Grand Bahama, and they might think that it's a good company or whatever else. If I want to sell car parts, and somebody comes to me and says, okay, hey, I can sell you 20 light bulbs, car headlights, for half the price that you can buy it online or whatever else, okay? I don't pay no VAT here. Grand Bahama is going to be, unless they can get around the Hospital Creek Agreement, somehow it's going to be tax exempt. Okay, I'll take that. Okay, but I'm going to charge you VAT because guess what? You're going to be selling this in Nassau, so I have to charge you VAT because that product is going to Nassau, and so I have to pay it to the government. Right? Technically. Okay, you carry your stuff to Nassau, you sell it on you add your VAT rate, 7.5%, whatever it is. You're looking to recoup from the government, you send in all your forms, the government goes looking for this company or this person in Grand Bahama to get their money, person is long gone. So I tell people we're going to have the practice is called the same thing with banks do with KYC, but I think is know your company as opposed to know your client. Know who you're dealing with, get reputable persons to help, reputable persons to look into, and sometimes it might inquire even go in and look into the company's records. There's going to be the consumer revenue agency, and then the consumer protection department. Okay, that the government is going to have to reinforce for these things to happen. And so, we in my association we look for VAT to cause fraud to increase dramatically. Because another way of defeating VAT is simply going to a cash-based system. Me and you right now are sitting down having a chat, we're going to do business. And I'm going to say to you, look here, why don't you, for your recorder, I'll give you $100 for your recorder. And you say, fine, that's nice. You're in the business of selling recorders. That's a sale. But what you do is I hand you $100 cash, you hand me the recorder. Okay. That's done. Who's gonna record that sale? You? Because if you record it, you're going to have to give the government 7.5% of the $100, right, that you did not charge the 7.5% to me. I'm going to say anything about it because guess what? I just saved 7.5% on that cost because I know if I go on to somebody else, it's going to be $107.50. So why? So you know what? I'm going to work with that. And you're going to have those type of entities popping up as well. And so it's going to be, up to persons like me to be looking out for them and trying to make sure that, the revenue sales, because the government is going to require persons to do accounting, to go and look at persons' books, to look at persons, records. These are the type of things the persons have to get used to. I think we're going to be more of an open society when it comes to that. But in the short term, me personally, I give it 2, 3, 4 years maybe before it really catches on, because persons are going to find a way around it. I mean, your big countries like Europe, and not countries like Europe, a continent like Europe, the EU was sitting down talking about how they were losing billions of dollars from VAT fraud, not $100 or $200, billions. Yeah.
Because people will try. It's just in the human nature.
Yeah, because the Majesty's Revenue Service in Britain, they have a whole fraud department. They have a whole fraud department sitting there, they're working consistently. They have their fraud hotlines, whatever else. And this is in Britain, where British people are staid and for the most part honest, right? You live there. No. They're looking for ways to get around the system. And that's another thing that we're going to have to look at, too, in the Bahamas, is that we're going to have individuals who actually know the systems. Canada, New Zealand, Britain, whatever. So they can come here. Because it's going to be open season. You have big companies who are going to utilize individuals like that. Believe it or not, I think that there's going to be fraud all through the business sector. From the small man on the street trying to make a hustle, to the guy at the top with the $1 million company.
But back to fraud security. I have just one final question, right? For a young business starting, how do you prevent the triangle? What can you do to, I guess, either look more into your employees or prevent opportunities? I mean, to completely forego the need to justify.
Well, most small businesses, if you're doing, say for instance, if you're doing, if you're opening up a clothing store, alrighty, proper inventory control, number one. Make sure your POS systems are on point. Make sure that you have security systems in place. For instance, cameras. A camera sitting right on top of a cash register is a big deterrent to a lot of employees ordering with cash. Also, make sure that your cash systems are in place, that they are good. I know a lot of people, when they have small businesses, they don't want to employ an accountant or whatever else, but we have a lot of persons who have friends or family members who is an accountant or CPA or whatever else. Utilize them. So like, hey, I can't afford your services, but I could buy you lunch. You know what I mean? If you come in for a couple hours and go through my records and make sure that everything is up and running. Because once employees, all right, see that you are serious about your security and the measures that you're putting in place to prevent theft, they're going to be they're going to be mindful as well. And also create a culture of security. You have small businesses with employ 3 or 4 persons. You know what? Have somebody come in and give them pointers on what to look for. With employees. The person who, only making $200 a week, but all, wearing the, well, I guess you can't say that these days, but the Michael Kors watch and all these other stuff, who's living the lifestyle that really is above what they can afford. And you as an employee can look for these type of things. This person is, they always out partying and enjoying themselves, maybe to too much of an extent, or they always traveling, they don't have a sugar daddy in the background nowhere. They don't have this drug dealer boyfriend because those days kind of dying. So there is something else going on, and I need to be on the lookout. And of course, it just comes back down to one of the things as a young or as an entrepreneur, even as a business owner, that you should be. You should always be involved in your company from top to bottom. You should know exactly what's happening in your business. A lot of business owners take a hands-off approach. And when you see fraud happens on a large scale, it's because the business person, the person who owns the company, is kind of lax. Another thing too is that you need to make sure that your employees understand, and there should be a written policy, what happens if they get caught stealing? What's going to be the penalty? Or we're going to just talk with you and let you go, right?
Take it to the full extent.
It's going to be, and let them sign off on it. Let them know that, look, this is going to happen. I tell people sometimes it only needs to be made an example of. You need, make an example of somebody, and once you do that, it kind of kills it also as well. And sometimes even as a small business owner, you might not be aware of what you need to do, and so that's where persons like me come in. And I tell people I'm not a person who's out there to be a millionaire tonight. If a small business owner comes to me, and I guess you can share this with your clientele. If a small business owner comes to me and they say, "Okay, what do we need to do?" I can help you. I can put procedures in place, and I don't have to charge you for it. I just believe that if we help everybody grow, it'll help the economy and eventually still come back around and help me anyway.
So how can they find you?
I guess right here, insurance management. But you can call me on my cell, which is the easiest way to get me, because I'm really in this building, 727-3061. And on Facebook, just message me on our site. I think it's AGT Security. Yeah, so just message me or whatever else, and I'll be sure to get back to you. But like I say, we do that a lot. I've done that for a lot of people. Just say, I've just gone in and say, this is what you need. This is, I've had people who come to me and tell me what they want. And I'll tell them, no, they can't afford it. This is what you need. Now, you could get what you want, but make sure put what you need. I always look at, especially like retail stores and stuff like that, the little devices that prevent loss are not expensive. The magnetic scanners and all that stuff. People think they cost $1 million. They actually, because retail stores are such big business, they make these things relatively cheap.
Okay.
They do that because they thrive on volume. And you can find, especially like when it comes to the clothing stores, you can find a lot of those stuff used. So,
Okay.
that's it.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.